This is my video update from Athens, Greece on this Friday, midday, November the 17th. Let's talk about some news. And let's start things off with CIA Director Burns' trip to Ukraine. He arrived in Kiev, I believe, on November 15th or November 16th. And I think he is still in Ukraine. And when the CIA director travels to a country, when he is dispatched to a hotspot, then you know he is there for one of two reasons. Reason number one is that Burns is in Ukraine in order to fix up the mess that is Project Ukraine, or Burns is in Kiev in order to clean up what is a collapsing Project Ukraine. Fix it up or clean it up. That is why CIA Director Burns is in Kiev. And CIA Director Burns, he is, without a doubt, the most professional, the most experienced top-level diplomat in the Biden White House. He may be the only adult in the administration, one of the few adults in the Biden administration. So yeah, he is meeting with the Alinsky regime, and he's either there to try and fix up a lot of the problems that we all see playing out in Ukraine. For example, the fighting between Alinsky and Zaluzhny, or he is going to leave Ukraine and travel back to the United States and tell Professor Biden that this thing can't be fixed. We need to clean this up and cut it loose, dump it on the European Union, perhaps. So that is a CIA director. That is the CIA director's trip to Kiev. We also have another high-level U.S. official in Kiev, or was in Kiev. That is one Penny Pritzker. Penny Pritzker. She is Biden's special representative for Ukraine's recovery. Miss Penny Pritzker. I believe she is a very wealthy, very wealthy, I want to say Chicago socialite. She comes from a very well-known, very wealthy family. I could be wrong about that, but Penny Pritzker. Anyway, she was appointed a couple of months ago as the special representative for Ukraine's recovery, which essentially means that she's going to be the person in charge of managing the hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars that is supposed to go towards Ukraine's recovery and reconstruction. That is her job. And she was in Kiev. Maybe she is also still in Kiev, but she was in Kiev. Her first trip, by the way, to Ukraine, and she was meeting with Alinsky and Yermak and Prime Minister Shmyhal, and she asked the Alinsky administration. They're all sitting at this big table. I imagine this is the picture that I have in my head. They're all sitting at this big table, and Miss Penny Pritzker, she asks the Alinsky administration, what would Ukraine do if, I don't know, I'm just throwing out a hypothetical. What would Ukraine do if the United States stopped sending money to Ukraine? Mr. Alinsky, what would you do if we stopped sending money to Project Ukraine. That is exactly what she put on the table when she was in Kiev. Not a joke. From Ukrainsky Pravda, imagine there may be no help. Conclusions of U.S. Special Representative's visit to Ukraine. Penny Pritzker, the U.S. Special Representative for Ukraine's recovery, has suggested that officials imagine how the country could survive economically without U.S. aid during her first visit to Ukraine. Ukrainsky Pravda stated that her first visit to Ukraine had left a rather disturbing aftertaste in many government offices in Ukraine. And you know, I think I actually have a quote bookmarked from Penny Pritzker's trip to Kiev. At the meetings, Penny tried to get an opinion along the lines of, let's imagine that there is no US aid. What do you need to do in the next year to make your economy withstand even in such a situation? And it made everybody so tense. Wow. Wow. What does the Alinsky regime do if, I don't know, let's just say we stop sending you money? What do you do, Mr. Alinsky, if we stop sending you money? Can you imagine Alinsky's face when he heard Penny Pritzker throwing out that hypothetical? Stop money? What? What you talk about? Stop money? This hypothetical, right? This hypothetical. Don't scare me like this, Miss Penny Pritzker. I need money. I will take loan. I'll take loan. Credit. You have credit card? I have machine. Put machine on card. Give me pin. I take money. Stop money to Ukraine. Miss Penny Pritzker, you're scaring me. So, yeah, Project Ukraine, not going well. And the military situation, not going well. In Avdeyevka, the situation is really, really bad. And my thinking on Avdeyevka is that as the Russian military grinds down the Ukraine military, perhaps they're going to encircle Avdeyevka. Maybe they're just going to leave it open like they did in Bakhmut and just continue to allow the Ukraine military to send troops into this fairly large village, maybe small city, in very heavily fortified in the Ukraine-controlled part of Donetsk. Maybe the Russian military is just going to allow Ukraine to continue to feed troops into this area as they annihilate the troops that are being sent in Avdeyevka. Maybe they will surround this city and eventually just capture it. Whatever the Russians have in mind, my thinking is that when Avdeyevka does collapse, when it does fall, so too will Alinsky and his administration. Just a hunch. It's just a hunch. I could be wrong about this. Avdeyevka could fall in a week. It could fall in a couple of months. I don't know. But I think we are at a point in time where most analysts believe that Avdeyevka will certainly fall to the Russians in one form or another, in one way or another. And when that does happen, I imagine that Alinsky is going to be in very, very big trouble. So Avdeyevka is not going well for the Alinsky regime. And the one little bit of progress that the Ukraine military was talking up was this foothold that they got in Kherson, in this area of Krinky. And they were talking up, the Ukraine military was talking up how this foothold was eventually going to lead to the Ukraine military finally making a move in the southern direction and making their way towards towards Melitopol or Crimea or the Sea of Azov or whatever nonsense they're talking about. Let's go back to the days of the super duper spring summer counteroffensive. Anyway, they were saying that this foothold in Krimky is proof that the Ukraine military can move forward in the southern direction and will be able to eventually, over time, split the Russian forces in the south. Well, it's now looking like Krimky, this foothold, was a trap. And the Russian military, now that they've got this 150 Ukrainian soldiers on the other side of this dried up river from the dam that the Ukraine military blew up, now that they have these soldiers in this foothold, it looks like the Russian military is proceeding to annihilate these soldiers and any other resources that are sent across the dried up river to this Krimky area. CNBC, they have an article with the title, "Russia says hell awaits Ukrainians after confirming they've crossed the Dnieper River into occupied territory. Russian forces are pummeling Ukrainian units that have crossed over the Dnieper River to the Russian-occupied left or eastern bank of the river in Kherson," an official said on Wednesday. So it was a trap. It was a trap. That's how I'm reading into it. And the Ukraine military and Alinsky, most likely Alinsky, he probably gave the order for something like this to happen because he has to show some sort of progress in order to secure money. Most likely, Alinsky said, "Yes, let's try to cross over the river in the dried up river in Kherson," and he fell right into this trap. And now the Russian military, they're going to annihilate the Ukraine military in this area. Even CNBC understands this. It's a trap, as the famous line goes from The Empire Strikes Back, or was it Return of the Jedi? I forgot which movie it was. It's a trap. It's a trap. The Guardian, they put out a podcast article with the title, "Has Putin Got the Upper Hand in Ukraine?" That was the title of this article / podcast discussion from The Guardian. And I can answer that, by the way. The answer is yes, he does. And he always has had the upper hand in Ukraine. From the very, very, very beginning of the special military operation, Russia and Putin, they have always had the upper hand in Ukraine. A year and a half, 2 years later, The Guardian is finally starting to figure things out. And we have this article from the Wall Street Journal. It's time to end magical thinking about Russia's defeat. Putin has withstood the West's best efforts to reverse his invasion of Ukraine, and his hold on power is firm. The U.S. and its allies need a new strategy, containment. And so this title and the featured image from this article via the Wall Street Journal, I think, says it all. It's time to end magical thinking with a very happy, a smiling Russian President, Vladimir Putin. This is as close to an admission of defeat that you're ever going to get from neocons. And it is neocons who wrote this article from the Wall Street Journal. Eugene Rumer, a former national intelligence officer for Russia at the National Intelligence Council, is director of the Russia and Eurasia program at Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, a neocon think tank, and Andrew S. Weiss, who worked on Russian affairs in both the George H.W. Bush and Clinton administrations, a Carnegie vice president for studies. So this is a neocon admission of defeat, and they try to cover it up a bit, and they try to paint a picture of all is not bad. You know, it's really not bad. That's kind of the picture that they're trying to put out there for this article. But when you really dig into this article, you understand that it's the neocons basically saying that they lost this one. And they also admit that a year and a half of information that they have been giving everybody about Project Ukraine, or at least everybody in the collective West about Project Ukraine, well, it's all been a bunch of lies. This is very much a lipstick on a pig type of article. They try to make it look good, but it's still a pig if you're the collective West. There's a lot of delusion and a lot of projection in this article, but it's an admission of defeat. Let me read you some of what this article is saying. Putin has reason to believe that time is on his side. At the front line, there are no indications that Russia is losing what has become a war of attrition. The Russian economy has been buffeted, but it is not in tatters. Putin's hold on power was paradoxically strengthened following Yevgeny Prigozhin's failed rebellion. In June, popular support for the war remains solid, and elite backing for Putin has not fractured. I think these guys watch my videos. The Russian economy has been buffeted, but it is not in tatters. Tatters, I tell you. Yeah, you guys are watching, aren't you? You Carnegie Endowment think tankers. Anyway, the Putin government has been strengthened following Prigozhin's failed mutiny/coup. Yep, that's exactly the analysis that we said on the Duran and on this channel, didn't we? That following Prigozhin, the Putin administration is going to be stronger than ever. And it's interesting to see that the Wall Street Journal is finally coming around to that conclusion. Let's continue. Western officials' promises of reinvigorating their own defense industries have collided with bureaucratic and supply chain bottlenecks. Meanwhile, sanctions and export controls have impeded Putin's war efforts far less than expected. Russian defense factories are ramping up their output, and Soviet legacy factories are outperforming Western factories when it comes to much needed items like artillery shells. Wait a minute. Weren't you telling us for a year and a half that Russia is running out of weapons? I thought the Russians can't make anything. I thought that Russia was a gas station masquerading as a country. Now you're telling me, Wall Street Journal, that Russian factories are outproducing collective West factories? Russia is outproducing all of the collective West? The United States, the European Union, Canada, Australia? Russia's outproducing all of them? I'm shocked, man. I'm shocked. Wow. Let's continue. What Western leaders conspicuously haven't done is level with their publics. This is the best. This is the best part. I'm interrupting myself. This is the best part. All right. What Western leaders conspicuously haven't done is level with their publics about the enduring nature of the threat from an emboldened, revisionist Russia. They have indulged all too often in magical thinking, betting on sanctions, a successful Ukrainian counteroffensive, or the transfer of new types of weapons to force the Kremlin to come to the negotiating table. Or they have hoped to see Putin overthrown in a palace coup. Magical thinking for a year and a half, for 2 years, the collective West has been indulging in magical thinking. Sanctions. The sanctions are going to destroy Russia's economy. Magical thinking. The super duper Ukraine counteroffensive that offends me and offends you and offends everybody. Magical thinking, that counteroffensive. Wonder weapons to the Alinsky regime. Magical thinking. And a coup in Moscow, a coup in the Kremlin. Putin's government's going to fall any day now. Putin's government's going to fall. Putin is suffering from 20 heart attacks. His elbow hurts. His knee hurts. He had a stroke. He's depressed. Putin, any day now, Putin is going to collapse. Any day now, we're going to get regime change in Russia. Magical thinking. There is some delusion in this article, though, because this article still holds on to, it still clings on to the fake news, the false narrative of the siege of Kiev. This article still believes that the Ukraine military fought bravely in the opening weeks of Putin's invasion, and they managed to defeat the Russian military that, with 40,000 men, was going to capture a city of 3 million. They still cling on to the fake narrative of the siege of Kiev. They haven't realized that what Putin was looking to do, and it almost worked. It almost worked if it wasn't for Boris Johnson, Professor Biden, and Olaf Scholz. If it wasn't for those three guys, then what Putin was aiming to do, which was to bring Alinsky to the negotiating table and pledge that that Ukraine was not going to get into NATO, it almost worked. That was the purpose of the first month of the special military operation. They still believe that Putin was looking to capture Kiev. So they still cling on to that myth in this article. And they also cling on to two more myths. They cling on to the myth that that Russia's military, even though it's winning, it's been ground down to dust. I think they use the word dust. That 10 years of Putin building up his military, that Ukraine has successfully ground it down to dust. So they still believe in that myth, even though in the article they admit that Russia's military is ramping up production in everything, and it's beating out whatever the collective West can do with regards to military production. And they also cling on to the myth that Ukraine is a democracy, that the EU is a democracy. They actually believe this. They believe that Ukraine's a democracy and the EU is a democracy, and the collective West has to help the democracy of Ukraine integrate into the democracy of the European Union. Did they not get the news that Alinsky canceled the elections? Did they not give you that news at the Carnegie Endowment think tank? Did you guys not read that? Anyway, let me read you a little bit more from this article. A policy of containment. This is their solution now. They're going to tell you what they think should happen, which is containment. A policy of containment today would mean continuing Western sanctions, isolating Russia diplomatically, preventing the Kremlin from interfering in our domestic politics, and strengthening NATO deterrence and defense capabilities, including sustained U.S. European reinvestment in our defense industrial base. It would also mean mitigating all of the damage, diplomatic, informational, military, and economic, caused by Putin's war. So their answer, their solution to this defeat, how do you put lipstick on the pig? Containment. That's how you put lipstick on this pig. And their formula, their diagnosis is sanctions, continue to sanction Russia. Though they admit that the sanctions haven't worked, they say that the collective West needs to continue sanctioning Russia. Okay, I don't think they really have any more sanctions left, but they say sanctions, isolation, continue to isolate Russia, though isolation has not worked. Russia has more support from the international community than ever before. But they say isolation. The only countries that are being isolated are the countries of the collective West. But isolation, military spending. Okay, of course. Let's give more money to the MIC. That's to be expected. And election meddling. So you know why they threw that one in there, election meddling. Basically, they're saying that what the governments of the collective West need to do is they need to prevent that evil Putin and those Russian trolls and those Russian bots. They need to prevent them from meddling in the wonderful democracies of the collective West, obviously in reference. And I think they actually throw Trump's name in this article. I think they do mention Trump a couple of times. Obviously, this is about more surveillance, more control, more censorship, and sounding the alarm bells that Trump might actually win the U.S. elections in 2024. And so, the Wall Street Journal, these think tankers are saying that they need to prevent those Russian trolls from helping Trump win the elections in 2024. So, election meddling, that's how you contain Russia. That's the containment strategy that the Biden White House has to now pivot towards because they've lost the conflict in Ukraine. Project Ukraine, they have lost it. So now they have to move towards Project Russia containment. That is what the Wall Street Journal is saying. And an absolutely amazing article from the Wall Street Journal. And I think yesterday or 2 days ago, the Biden White House, they actually signed a government funding bill that does not include money to the Alinsky regime. I think it also doesn't include money to Israel, but no money in this funding bill to Project Ukraine. And Sullivan, he's made some statements over the past couple of days sounding the alarm bells, saying that if Project Ukraine doesn't get any money like ASAP, then the whole thing is going to absolutely collapse. So sticking with Alinsky, he had a meeting the other day with various journalists, I believe journalists from Africa. They traveled to Kiev and they sat down with the clown puppet leader, and he said some very interesting things. He said that if we want to end the war, we must end it, insisting that Russia must be put in its place, or else it would strike again later on. According to Alinsky, his country has already lost too many people. Ukraine cannot afford to even think about freezing this conflict, however hard it may be. So Alinsky, he is trapped in the sunk cost fallacy. That is where Alinsky finds himself. They've already lost too much that they can't stop at this point in time. So they're just going to continue on, even if it means that the entire country is going to be destroyed. The sunk cost fallacy from Alinsky. And so I think this is a good spot to transition over to our clown world. Because as Alinsky was speaking to these journalists from Africa and talking about how he will not freeze the conflict because the costs are just too high for him to freeze this conflict, he then started talking about how his administration, they have information that Russia is going to start a conflict in the Balkans. This is what Alinsky was telling these journalists in Kiev. Ukraine has information that Russia could spark a new war in the Balkans. And then Alinsky went on this unhinged tirade about how his intel services, his government, they have information that Russia, after the Middle East, he's blaming Russia on everything that is happening in the Middle East. After everything that Russia is doing in the Middle East, they are going to transition over to the Balkans, and they're going to start a big conflict in the Balkans, according to Alinsky and his intel sources. Alinsky claiming that Russia not only started the war in the Middle East, or they have some involvement in starting the war in the Middle East, but Russia is also going to now start a war in the Balkans. And all of this is being done, according to Alinsky, in order to divert resources and money away from Project Ukraine. And the journalists that were listening to Alinsky, you could see the look on their face. They were like, what is this guy smoking? Or what is this guy snorting, maybe, is what those journalists were saying. You could see the look on their face. They're like, wow, wow, this guy is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Project Ukraine is collapsing. Alinsky is falling apart. He is absolutely falling apart. Alinsky also promised to invest and develop African states after the war. Statements like this discredit everything else he says. Yeah, he also said he's going to invest in Africa. Ukraine is going to invest in Africa. Bro, what are they giving you, Alinsky? What are they giving you? Man. So that was Alinsky. Clown World, courtesy of Alinsky, and one more Clown World, and we'll wrap up this video. So Biden, he called Xi Jinping a dictator yesterday. Well, he said that that not only is Xi Jinping a dictator, but any other form of government that is not exactly like the United States, that is not a shining example of democracy like the United States, for which Biden won the election in 2020, which is an example of what a democracy the U.S. has. Anyway, Biden, he said that any country that is not like the United States, well, that's a dictatorship, according to Professor Biden. And so the Chinese Foreign Ministry, they responded to Biden's statements, and they said Joe Biden's statements about Xi Jinping at the press conference were both wrong and irresponsible. And then we have this tweet from End of Wokeness. Every single time Biden opens his mouth without a script, a part of Blinken's soul leaves his body. And you can see all of the photos there, because when he said that Xi Jinping is a dictator, we now have a video of Blinken's reaction. And you can definitely see that a part of Blinken's soul, if he has one, a part of his soul did indeed leave his body when Professor Biden said that Xi Jinping and any country that isn't a U.S. democracy is a dictatorship. Anyway, that's the Clown World, everybody. The Duran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, ODYSEE, BitChute, Telegram, Rockfin, and Twitter X. And go to the Duran shop, pick up some merch, 20% off. Use the code TheDuran20. How about this article? Trump made staffers watch Guns N' Roses' November Rain just because it was awesome. That's an interesting article. I don't know if this is true or if this is fake, but sounds pretty cool to me. November Rain is a pretty awesome song. Pretty good video as well. Anyway, that's the video. Take care.